Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Dr. Ja-Nae, Duane, and Steve Fisher joining us. This dynamic duo are the authors of the new book, SuperShifts, Transforming How We Live, Learn, and Work in the Age of Intelligence. We're going to spend most of today's show talking about change management, and the major disruptions that are rocking our world right now. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Excellent. So, Ja-Nae, let's start with you. Give us the elevator pitch version of your story.
Yeah, that's hard to put in an elevator pitch, but I will say that I have a nonlinear path, as I find that most folks do, most leaders do. I actually started out as an opera singer, and from there, because of the market crash in 2007, 2008, I ended up finding myself as an entrepreneur. And that's what started my entrepreneurial journey. Fast forward a few companies later, I've done about 10 years of work with inside helping companies doing innovation work, and have over the past 6 years moved into being a behavioral scientist and bringing a lot of that work inside of organizations, which is where I find I spend most of my time if I'm not in the classroom or not doing research today.
Excellent. Well, our producer and I'm a musician as well. I just like to spend the rest of the show talking about being an opera singer.
Let's do it.
Let's do that. That sounds really, really interesting. Steve, let's move on to you. What's your elevator pitch story?
I am not an opera singer. But
you don't even play one on TV.
I could, yeah, probably. I got, if I don't, Ja-Nae might say I have enough drama in me to make it happen. But I am a musician as well. I mean, guitar, piano, all the other traditional instruments, but all creatives. But my story is one of technology, and my track being a futurist is a little different because I read Toffler when I was like 13 in the 80s, and that had a big impact on my life. And I was like, you could do this as a job. But then, guitars, girls, cars, all that kind of fun stuff. In the 80s, it was a great decade. But I kind of left that. I went to college and I was studying architecture and in business. And I was just working at a bank, and they wanted to do this thing called networks. It was back in the 90s, and no one wanted to touch it. Everyone was afraid, which has got a lot of parallels to like today. People were afraid of the tech and the change. Yep. But I took it on and I loved it. I have a knack for tech, always have, just kind of natural skill set. But I've been in tech for 35 years. I've been building products for about 25 of it. So my background is product management, design. I'm not an engineer, although I really always wanted to be one, like an aerospace engineer, but the math thing is just, not me. What's exciting me about today in AI is that you can vibe code, like you can do a lot of low code, no code. So I'm actually kind of looking to get into that, to kind of learn agentic. Like, I think it's best if you're trying to build systems, and I've designed a lot of them with AI of the last few years, is understanding how you don't have to do it perfectly, but if you can understand how to hire it and what to hire, I think is super critical. And yeah, so my world has been enterprise software. I worked in a bunch of agencies. I was at McKinsey for a number of years, left to associate partner, and I helped co-create the futures practice there. So that was a big thing for me, is that large companies that very more short-termism, being able to do long-range strategic planning. And there's a lot of other, fancy futurist terms, but let's just say timing-wise, I've only had really good timing once or twice in my life. Once was meeting being there to meet my wife, future wife. But we put the group together 6 months before COVID. So when COVID happened, we became very popular. because no one knew what to do, right? Everything was kind of up in the air. So I think that's a lot, that draws parallels to now, because back then it was a lot of moving everything online, business model transformation, digital transformation, things, supply chains completely, snapping, like all of that layered on top of new ways of working that I think accelerated. They're trying to pull back, but that's a whole nother conversation of return to office. But where we are now, that was all metaverse and Web3. Now we're in this new hype cycle, but it's a little different. And we'll get into kind of the age of intelligence, which we're in the middle of, the beginnings of. And that's why we wrote the book, because there's so much viscerally happening. And there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in terms of where we are, where people want to be. And they're just feeling the change. So it's just so internally, and they're just, it's hard to process for a lot of people. So we tried to really do that with this book, is give some clarity to what's happening right now. And it's actually more of a bigger pattern, but then there are things that are very unique about this. So,
yeah, I really, as an executive at Kaplan, I can count the number of times we did this on one hand, where we brought in a futurist like yourself to an annual strategy meeting and talked about. Let's see. One time we had somebody come in, and it was the 5 big changes and the 3 big changes. Right. The number of changes doesn't matter. The importance from a leadership team. So if you're listening to this and you're on a leadership team and it's all short-termism all the time, take a step back and invite Ja-Nae and Steve in to come and talk about, or pick up SuperShifts and really think about the deeper future and its impact on your business. And that's why we're doing this episode today. So, Ja-Nae, give us the 30,000-foot overview of your book, SuperShifts. What's the main theme?
Yeah, so what we want folks to really understand is that SuperShifts are very different from what we know as megatrends. And megatrends might be things like AI adoption, or even multi-generations within the organization for the first time in history. When we talk about SuperShifts, these are tectonic shifts that are changing not only the way that we work, but really the future of humanity. And they are happening, as Steve mentioned, within this new age, which we coined the age of intelligence. We've moved out of this age that we associate with the Industrial Revolution, and we know as sort of that age of machines, where everything's centralized, and everything from the way that we work, our 9 to 5, to our educational system. And now we're moving into this completely new age, which is more of a symbiotic age with not only AI, but also as we're thinking about collective intelligence and what it means to be human. And within the book, we've identified 9 shifts, which I'll go over a few of them, and then I'll pass it over to Steve to go over the other ones. First one is
Ja-Nae, before we get there, I just want to.
Did I get ahead of myself?
No, you're doing great. It's the term megatrends versus super shifts. I want to get really clear about that, because in the strategy sessions that I was talking about with Kaplan senior leadership, it was all about megatrends. That was the phrase that was used. So let's just pull that apart just a little bit more, or maybe say what you said again about what the difference between those two things are.
Yeah, so why don't I kick it off, and then I'll pass it over to Steve to also go slightly deeper on this. So a megatrend is something that already has a strong signal and that you see on the horizon, and it's also short term. What I mean by short term is that, just like a trend, it will impact us, but it won't necessarily change everything about how we exist. That differs greatly from SuperShifts, which are much like tectonic plating, like completely disrupt everything and the way in which we work, live, and function as humanity. And as we are looking at the next 200 years in this new age of intelligence, there were 9 of these really tectonic shifting super shifts that we had identified that are changing not only how we're moving into the future, but also how we are going to reimagine the systems in which we live as we're moving through the next 200 years.
Excellent.
Steve, do you want to add to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so first, let's talk about Kaplan for a sec. So it's interesting you said they bring them in like once a year. I think that's one of the biggest things with the book to the end, the kind of third act of the book, kind of the actionable pieces of it with our foresight framework, like Spectrum, but also what we call the futures operating system. Like you need to not just have people in, do a strategy meeting, do scenarios and put a report out and put it in a drawer, right? It's
and then go back to work.
To your point, it has to be a living thing. Kaplan needs to do it on an act. The best thing would have been to have the futurists there, even quarterly or fractionally, like that ongoing analysis, because things change, right? Yeah. And it happens a lot. I think it's becoming more common that there's more, and that's my kind of mission, is getting 1 million people futures fluent to talk the language, to understand where its value is in a place and do it in an ongoing basis. But you leveraging things, they would use megatrends and I'll talk about SuperShifts after that. Just think about, megatrends are like kind of that long-term, they're directional forces, right? Drivers. They're grounded, like Ja-Nae said, in like a signal or data analysis, right? Across the different, dimensions of tech or economics or politics or whatever. But here's the thing is like they're linear and they're incremental. They are recognized, right, in that way. And they're useful for the trend watching, the forecasters, all that, so it's very domain specific. So here's the difference. So SuperShifts is kind of beyond that. You're looking at kind of intersecting systemic transformation. And we'll talk about like transform. Ja-Nae's systems background is really, her background with this that's her baby. But it reshapes like how you live, learn, and work. That's very different, right? Versus the thing. So yeah. It's like I said, I always say it's accelerated convergence. So it's like multiple shifts, a lot of the trends, the signals, all the things kind of come together to create like it's non-linear change, it's convergent. So I think for that kind of different, kind of spreading out, it also requires like a bit of new mental models, like new frameworks. It is a little bit different way, but it is more powerful in that respect. So hopefully
thanks for that.
Bifurcates it. Yeah.
Now let's play our tennis match. You got 9 super shifts. if the two of you can kind of go back and forth and introduce our listeners to each super shift and just really briefly why it's important and then why they should engage with your book. Ja-Nae?
Yeah. Okay. So I will start with IntelliFusion. So imagine IntelliFusion as that fusion between humans, machine, and AI. And this really is going to transform not only our decision making, but also what we imagine it's like to be human. And within the shift, we talk about Homo machina, which is what we consider a number of subspecies of humans blended with AI and machines. Everything from a collective consciousness to even as we're thinking about the human race being interplanetary. The fact that we will need AI and machines in order to be able to adapt to space. So we dive in deep into what it means to be augmented in that way. The first super shift that we talk about is generational drift. Generational drift is really the realignment of generational change that we're seeing, aging populations, and the evolution of social values based on the convergence of these different generations. And imagine, we had talked about a mega trend of having multiple generations within the workforce. This is the first time in history where we have 4 generations in the workforce at the same time. What does that mean from a values perspective? What happens when we have more and more people living to be over 100? So that's one super shift. Another super shift is IntelliFusion. So IntelliFusion is the merging of human with machine and AI in a way that not only transforms decision making, but also allows us to question, what does it mean to be human? Within this super shift, we identify a number of subspecies within Homo machina, which is that blending of human, machine, and AI. And we dive into everything from collective intelligence to, as we're moving to be an interplanetary species, the need to have machine and AI integration, because as soon as we head into space, our muscles begin to atrophy, and so we will need that in order to adapt. The next one that we talk about, which I know that all of your listeners are feeling, is tech acceleration. So as we think about this super shift, as we think about the exponential rate of technological change, it will never be slower than it is today. And so how do we really start to adapt when technological advancement is outpacing society and is causing some of the tensions that I know that at least everyone I speak to is feeling, and I'm sure many of your listeners are feeling as well. The next one is actually my favorite super shift, which is reality remix. And this is the super shift where we are blending both the digital and physical environments. So imagine a world in which you can go from being inside of VR and in a digital environment, and then having the interoperability to then have a digital twin that is a hologram within your in your place of work. And it will really force us to critically think, what is real? How do we define reality? What does that mean from an identity perspective? What does that mean from a relationship perspective? And then next one that I will talk about before I hand it over to Steve is social quake. So really this upheaval of our social systems and what that means from an erosion of trust in bodies and institutions that we used to trust and we now are questioning. And what does that mean from a governance perspective, a global governance perspective? And how are we really going to define legitimacy when it comes to either our systems of the future or even our institutions? So I'll pause there and hand it over to Steve.
Oh, I'm tired already. Steve, take us home in the next 4.
Batter up. Yep, batter up. So I will be hopefully very brief. The last few is eco awakening. So it's not a tree hugging thing, but it's humanity's. We're going through like a shift in really how we connect with the planet or recognize Earth as a living system. But the cool thing is that AI, biotech, and sustainability are converging to actually create the opportunity for us to regenerate the ecology of the planet. So I think that's that's a positive thing. It's not just like politics or terms or, scare tactics or catastrophism. Ja-Nae mentioned social quake. There's the power flow, which is one of my favorites, which is, energy transformation. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing geopolitics have such, it's always going to be about resources, but what if we have abundance, right? We have decentralized, intelligent energy systems, the way we, have power held, literally and figuratively. So I think there's an opportunity for us to look at, especially with the quantum era, which is we call this first era in this new age of intelligence, and then also things like fusion. We're going to change the power stack. I'm very excited for that. The last two to kind of bring it home is world mosaic. So it's really about identity. It's global kind of cultural fluidity, right? This is like it's a sense of belonging, but it's going to be shaped by new kinds of networks, the ideologies, digital communities, rather than just geography and moving across borders. So it is that kind of global world togetherness, but it's not just about the borders disappear. I think in the last one, which is also a big one probably for listeners, is BioNexus. So this is biology and technology kind of fusing. I mean, we have things, CRISPR, like gene editing, but it's going to go way beyond that. Neural interfaces, enhanced cognition, what it means to be human, really redefined at the molecular and the mental level. So there's all 9. They cover they cover it all, but they leave things open for conversation and exploration.
All right. Well, we're going to take a really short commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to dive into the change management aspects of all of this. How is a human going to deal with this? So we'll be right back. Hey everyone, I'd like to invite you to start your weekend with me on the Saturday Morning Muse podcast. I briefly explore topics that span leadership, business management, education, and personal continuous improvement. Subscribe to the Saturday Morning Muse podcast on your favorite podcast streaming app or visit andrewtemte.com for more information. And we're back with Ja-Nae, Duane, and Steve Fisher talking about their new book, SuperShifts. Now, Ja-Nae, you are the behavioral scientist in the room today. What are the implications for the average human to process and accept all that change that you guys described in the top of the show? We're already seeing a large part of the population. My Facebook feed is filled with, I wish it was 1972 again, right? So suppose you have, and 1972 wasn't all that great of a time period. Suppose you have a 45-year-old mid-level manager sitting right in front of you right now who's already struggling to keep up with the pace of change at work and at home. What do you say to this individual?
Yeah, well, first of all, I say, listen, you are not alone. Just know that. And know that, again, as we think about the rate of technological change, it will never be slower than it is today. And so you will never be able to catch up. But what can you do instead? Instead, one of the things that you can do is really look at how you're coming at both either these technologies, your adoption of these technologies, or even the changes in which we are seeing in the world, and come to it in a different way. And the first thing I have folks do normally is really do an unlearning audit. So what are the beliefs that they have? What are the biases that they're bringing to the table? What are the heuristics that they're using in their day-to-day? And what's serving you now? And what really, in many ways, do you need to get rid of? Because where we're heading, we don't have a heuristic to lead in the future. And that's part of the tension that we're feeling right now. We are trying to take our old heuristics, our old mental models, and use them in this whole new age and this whole new way of work and of living. And as you know, and as I know, it's just not working. So really being able to level set and go, you know what, I know this is still working. Let me hold on to this, but then let me get rid of these beliefs, these values, these heuristics, and be almost like a child and have a curious want to understand a new way of leading in this age of intelligence. From there, what I would say is we've all gotten really comfortable in many different ways, which is another reason why we feel this tension. And so how can you push yourself just to your edge? And I have people do this in a controlled way. And we'll just take AI adoption. I think that this is one that people are struggling with a lot. And it's something that I've been doing a lot of work with people on, is how can you incorporate AI into your current processes in a way that you're questioning, and being critical about the technology, questioning those processes, but you're pushing yourself just slightly beyond your comfort zone. What are different small micro actions that you can take? Maybe it's about being more AI fluent. Maybe it's building up either reskilling or upskilling around data. What are the things in which you can do, again, small micro actions that are going to make you slightly uncomfortable as a leader and as an individual, but then that can help make you more comfortable with the amount of disruption and the amount of stressors that you will have in your life. Because to be honest, as we think about the next 20 years, the next 200 years, we are not done with Black Swan events. And so how can we start to prepare ourselves and our organizations for them? How can we have more of an anti-fragile mindset? And so if you can introduce these stressors in a small, controlled way for yourself, you can then identify ways in which you can do that for your teams as well as your organization.
Yeah, I want to really dive into this phrase unlearning. So I talk a lot about lifelong learning. I'm an educator, and it's all about being mentally agile and what am I learning today for the future. We very seldom talk or use the phrase, what am I going to unlearn today? And that sounds like it's going to be a really important skill for the future, is because you can't learn without becoming uncomfortable. And I would bet that you can't unlearn without putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation and working through that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree 200%. And in some ways, I'm not fully comfortable with the term unlearn, because I don't believe that we fully unlearn. But to me, it's a term that can also help us know that we need to shift the way in which we have learned in the past. And that is the biggest piece here. And, I saw this initially as an opera singer, and because the way I'm a very lateral thinker, and so I take what I learn in one place and translate that across. And what I found is that I was initially taught, well, you have to learn by rote, like you have to learn, all these phrases together. And this is how you do X. And just like we're teaching in our educational systems now, right? Like I'm a professor. There's specific things that we have historically done that I see now don't actually work if we want people to really synthesize the material. Yeah. And so being able to scrap that way of learning and go, great, how can I take this? And we'll just take a new skill set. Maybe you're learning data science and you've never been exposed to it. You've never even explored statistics, and you go, or maybe it's Python, and you're like, okay, I've never coded once in my life. Like, how do I start to approach this? And for many folks, it's about saying, I need to approach this in a different way. What are some of the first principles in which I need to explore? What's the foundation of what it is that I'm trying to either learn or expose myself to? How can I explore that in different contexts? How am I synthesizing this? And can I question how I'm synthesizing this, and ask questions about that, even of myself? How might I use this in my day-to-day and not necessarily my work? Being able to do those things in small ways will actually shift, will allow you to be able to unlearn the way in which you've learned previously and start to shift your thinking around how you approach a new topic. And that alone is worth all the gold in the world.
That's super. You just gave our listeners a skill. I like to talk about skills on the show, a skill that they can adopt to learn and unlearn. So thank you for that. Steve, let's go to the positive footing here. Let's look at opportunity. You're an entrepreneur. You're a futurist. Mm-hmm. Suppose that you have a 35-year-old sitting right in front of you right now, got this really strong entrepreneurial spirit and desire. What's your advice for this person to take advantage of the age of intelligence?
2 questions. What do you think is broken and how can you automate it? Because if we can track a process, if we can map a process, we can automate it. I think beyond everyone's about the GPTs and LLMs and all the RAGs and all the acronyms. The real thing some of your listeners probably have heard about, but we're just beginning, is agentic AI.
Right.
The agentics, think about it, if you think about business process, and there have been different terms, right? Business process reengineering in the 90s and business transformation. Now it's digital transformation. It's going to be about agentic transformation. That's what I think. And I think there's an opportunity around every nook and cranny corner, and, there's always the thing about, Ja-Nae and I, our first book is called The Startup Equation, and it's a framework for doing startups. And you can be a coffee shop or you can be a mobile app, doesn't matter. There's a process, and much has changed. I'm hoping we can update the book in the next year or so, because AI can be your co-founder too, is that you can look at the power of 10 and not just this 10x, crush it kind of thing, which I abhor. Go to eat dinner with your family and you don't have to open your laptop up every night. But if you look at all the opportunities all the things that are being automated, there's always competition, true. But you have to look at, SaaS models are probably going to go into the ether, into the background, because you're not even going to talk to those things anymore. You're going to program how it actually does things, talking to the CRM, pushing data over into the email. Like you're going to make that happen. So first, what do you love to do? What's your passion? Do you find a calling? Do you want things you want to change? What is that? Because that's got to drive you through the times when no one believes in you, no one thinks it's going to happen. But you have to have that, we call the X factors. You have to have the resiliency, the entrepreneurial stomach, not just the spirit. You have that. Is there something that in your own set of work skills and processes and things you see are really broken that you really think that now AI finally can actually tackle that? And if you can use agentic or other types of systems, and you can pull together and even scale not only your business opportunity, but your internal operations. Like you could create an army of marketers that are all automated and with one person instead of hiring 10. There is a blitz scaling type of opportunity that we've never experienced. But you will have other people trying to do the same thing. Right. So it's not just about the race, but it's about the journey. So that's
excellent.
That's my coaching moment.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for that. Now, Ja-Nae, your book starts. You sent me the digital copy of the book, and I got into the preface, and the preface is a letter to the children who will live all of their lives in this age of intelligence. So now suppose that you've got a 15-year-old high school student sitting right in front of you right now. What's your message to the student? Is this a world of hope and opportunity for that student?
Yeah. So I will say that, we have an 8-year-old. And so whether or not I'm speaking to the 15-year-old or even our 8-year-old son, the message is still the same, that this is an opportunity to really unlock our human potential, but also really have a different, more holistic view of what it means to be human. The opportunity to create positive sum outcomes instead of pinning ourselves against one another or ourselves against AI. What are ways in which we can reimagine symbiosis in this new age that can help us unlock not only our human potential, but our collective potential? And so what I'd say to the 15-year-old and I'd say to our son, Max, is those opportunities start now with every decision that you make, with every decision that I make. And let's make some right ones together by having conversations about those now.
Yeah, very, very cool. Well, let's conclude our time together. I have a series of lightning round questions. You can decide amongst you which one takes and answers it. But the first one, you just won $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that half of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or cause. Who do you pick?
None. So I think Steve and I will have different answers to this. I don't like the idea of giving that amount of money to one organization. I believe there's a lot of great folks doing a lot of great work. And if there was an organization that was really looking to convene, we'll say, a more broader audience with multiple stakeholders in a way that allowed for varying opinions, because to me, that's the only way we're going to really make change here in the world. And so I'd rather not have the money and still have the conversations than give that type of money to one organization without having that be disseminated.
Cool. Interesting perspective. Steve?
I would give it to but this would be a conflict of interest. I would give it to our own nonprofit, the Human Frontier Institute, to actually create the grants that Ja-Nae talked about. But if you force my hand, it's got to be somebody external. Like, it'll probably be St. Jude's. Oh. It's just children's cancer. I mean, for me, it's a question of I would have to put in the funding agreement stipulations on the budget and how it's endowed and how it's used. Otherwise, they're not always good actors, and you have to make sure that the system guardrails are in place. But that's a very important cause for me.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Second question, and this is a good one for the two of you. I put you in a rudimentary time machine, and you can send a message to an earlier version of yourselves. What's the message, and what version of yourselves do you go with it? And I'm talking to futurists here. Are we going to have time machines?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I actually think that, and I don't know if we'll agree or disagree on this, I actually think that we'll unlock a part of our brain that will allow us to to realize that time is not linear, though we have put that construct on it. And if I was going back and I was leaving a message, I wouldn't leave a message because then that would change where I am today. And I'm very happy with where things are today. And even the smallest signal can have a rippling effect.
Fantastic. Steve?
Yeah, it's kind of the things you put in your path, like the things that have happened, good and bad, in my life have led me to where I am. Although I would say to my entrepreneur, my first company self is buy lots of Amazon and don't sell it. That's the Back to the Future 2. That's the sports almanac version. Just buy Amazon and Microsoft, no matter how bad it looks, don't sell it. And then so I think there's a lot. I wouldn't change the path because it's like too many it's
for sure.
We're supposed to be.
Yeah. So final question, we're all works in progress. What are you guys focused on right now in your own personal journey of growth? You're helping others get set up for a really wild ride in the future. What are you guys working on right now?
Steve, you want to start since I've been starting?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, it's kind of, I was left FTI Consulting in January. I've been doing a lot of coaching with companies and individuals to want to do futures work, developing a few sets of training and learning things from the book, because the book launch was kind of all consuming, and we're also working on our next book, which is coming out next March, which is a more tactical, like a business model generation type of book around SuperShifts, but all the actions around that. So that's taking up. But yeah, I am doing some fractional futurist work with clients, and I just, it's what I've always meant to do. And until I retire and become a sci-fi author, that's be my
that's the dream.
Gig. Nice. That's the dream, not the Great American Novel, but the Great American Space Battle.
Excellent.
Great Global Space Battle. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Ja-Nae?
Yeah, so I had a near-death experience last year that's totally changed how I view not only my health, but how I push myself physically. And because of the work that I've been doing with executives and leaders and peak performers, I've really embraced what it means to do more of this physical work. And so I'm actually training to climb the top peaks of the US, but I'm starting with the top 80 peaks here in Massachusetts. That's my first goal. And then I'm working on some other smaller micro goals that are associated with that within New England. So I'm super excited, and it's a new way of pushing myself that it has just informed a lot of my work. And so it's been really enriching.
Excellent. Well, where can folks get a hold of you? I assume SuperShifts is obviously out on Amazon and major bookstores, but where can folks get a hold of you?
A few places. So I'll start with the big ones. So put in the show notes too. So there's supershiftsbook.com, which you can learn more about it. There should be a pop-up to get the first 2 chapters, but we're going to give you the link for the landing page. You can go directly there and get the preface and the the prologue and the introduction. And that'll get you on the mailing list. We got a lot of things going on, a lot of cool stuff. And then individually, there's me, which is stephenfisher.io, and my show, Think Forward, which is Think Forward Show. You'll see a prettier AI version of me on the thumbnail. So nice. Then Ja-Nae is, go ahead.
Ja-Nae.io, JA-NAE.io.
Excellent.
There we go.
Well, Ja-Nae, Steve, thank you so much for being on the show in this extended episode. I did really want to get fairly deep in this conversation because it's so important. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. Great conversation. Thank you for the time.
Excellent. My name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this really impactful episode with your friends and your colleagues, maybe even a family member. The show is produced by Nicholas Temte. We'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.